Not so long ago, I made a video saying why the world doesn't trust China. And I got inundated from, you could say, the nationalists in China. Now, I can check where people would actually be, and it would say that 24% of my viewers would come from America, Canada, UK, and it would go down the list all the way down to Indonesia, for example. So I wondered where these people came from. So what I did is use a marvelous website called Grabify. And in some of the replies, I put in a link. And then they clicked on the link. When they click on the link, I can find out exactly where they came from. Now, a lot of people were using a VPN because you can't access YouTube directly in China. And there you can see that they were using a VPN and the original source of where they were coming from. You can check it out. It's a really good app if you're not too sure. And if these people do click on it, they will send you to, let's say, booking.com, for example. Then you can tell where they are, what phone they are using, etc., etc. Now, many thanks to Pleasant Green for doing this and showing us where and how to do it. So these people who sort of bombed me with all these comments, I would say mainly did come from China. And another thing, a VPN is actually illegal in China. So what you're doing is breaking the law. With all this information, it's so easy to make up a video. Some of the comments I got, I have actually done a screenshot of, and first one, Heather Hamer, 2 hours ago, you know very little about China, which is really surprising because I've been in Asia for 31 years. Most of my friends are in Shanghai and Hong Kong, and I can just ask them lots of things on what's happening in their community, and they will give me an honest reply. The simple thing is, obviously, I'm going to protect their interests and not reveal their names. So do I know very little about China? I would say the opposite with it, because I have contacts within mainland China and Hong Kong. And I got quite a lot of comments to say most you said are not true, but didn't link me any evidence. Things, biggest lie. You don't know history, old man. You're exposing your ignorance. So, when was the Great Leap Forward? I think it was 1958 or around that time. When was the Vietnam War? Started in 1959 and ended in 1975. The Cultural Revolution, I think, began in the late 60s, 1968, and ended in 1975. So with that, I don't think I don't know my history. I think I do. Here's another one. That's a big fat lie. The world trusts China. The world doesn't. The world does not trust the US. Well, let's be honest with you. Do we trust any government? And what has the government actually really truly done for the adult life? Not much. Does take a lot of tax and give very little back. So when we look at China and we look at the history of the Made in China logo, like the toy car that you got in the 70s, for example, made in China, it would sort of like not last long compared to, let's say, a Matchbox car, which was made in the US. But these were the early days. We look at Hong Kong, and we will delve into Hong Kong a little bit longer. A treaty was signed between the UK and China in 1984. And basically it stated, one country, two systems. Everyone agreed with it. Hong Kong would maintain its democracy and freedom and travel, etc., etc. And then when Xi took over in 2013, you had the umbrella movement in 2014 and the national security when people were unhappy. Like 2 million people went on the streets and protested. There were, granted, some small violent escapades, and the Chinese media and the Western media did focus on this. But the thing is, I was there and I walked through these protests, just these peaceful protests, people sitting down on the street or walking down the Hong Kong island, just upset with this because China had broke the deal with the UK. Two systems, one country, nothing big changes in 50 years. She broke that. So how can you trust a country, I'm not going to say country, how can you trust a government who breaks a treaty? It's as simple as that. Then we have this guy, under Xi Jinping's tenure, China's leader. China's GDP has more than doubled in 2020. She eradicated absolute poverty once for all in 2013. Let's stop there. Let's see this article here. China's economy had a miserable year in 2024, and in 2024 it might be worse. Xi Jinping didn't. It wasn't him who alleviated 800 billion people out of poverty. Go into history. It started in the 1980s. You can check it out from a very reliable source of the World Bank. It's just him claiming that he did it in a very short space of time. It's a big load of bullshit. Go to YouTube if you are allowed. Go to some pictures and you can see the absolute poverty. You can go to some Western shills who live in China and you can see poor people on the street. Absolute poverty, it hasn't gone. What else did he say? The Belt and Road Initiative with over 150 countries. These are developing countries. Why has no developed country entered into the Belt and Road Initiative? And why did Italy, the only Western European country to pull out of the Belt and Road Initiative? It's basically giving money to a poor country to develop the infrastructure. 70% of the workers will come from China. I've seen it with my own eyes here in Heilongjiang province, and they do have a train system, okay. But who's going to get the money from the train system when they're unable to pay, etc.? The list goes on like that. You've got to look at both sides of the story. You've got to look at the whole story, not just one side. You can go back to Hong Kong and says, you are lying that people in Hong Kong are quite okay with the national security law. They're okay because they don't have any choice. But if you speak to some Chinese people who were at the protests, and I have spoken to many of them because a lot of them were my actual friends, they were just like, why is this happening? Hong Kong's working perfectly well, and now you impose this very strict kind of policy, which the people of Hong Kong, the democratic people in Hong Kong, didn't want. 2 countries, 1 system. People in Hong Kong want it. They were happy that the Chinese took over in 1997 with the agreement from Margaret Thatcher from 1984, the 99-year rule of the British, all done. So the national security law, it should have been done in 2047, not in 2019. So you can see why a lot of people, look at the streets, you remember the protests, millions upon millions walking down the streets in Hong Kong peacefully. Yeah. There were, again, I repeat, some incidents, some minor incidents at the airport and some subway stations, but these were only a couple of thousand. It is bad, granted, but the majority of people were just there. And why do people want to leave? I've helped maybe like 20, 30 people leave Hong Kong through helping them with some education, for example, just because they are just unhappy with it and they decide they want to have a more peaceful, democratic life and are really scared what's going to happen next. So with a population of 8 million, I would say that some people are happy with the national security law, but I would say the majority are not. The thing is, go to Hong Kong and go and speak to people and find out, not just the people that you know, but real people, not the people who are nationalists, but people who've been in Hong Kong, you could say, for generations and generations. Now, there are a lot more comments I can waffle on for maybe another hour related to this. I did mention, and someone even picked out with this and said, I am a simple man. And I admit I'm a simple man, but hey, I retired at 44 years old with a relatively good pension, etc., and because of simplicity. I've never made anything complicated. I look at both sides. I see the Western media, yeah, I see the Chinese media like Xinhua News, etc. I have lived and been in Hong Kong. I don't know how many times I've been in and out of China, maybe 300-400 times in the last 30 odd years. And I do have, the majority of my friends are in Shanghai and in Hong Kong, and this is where I get information from. I look at Twitter feeds. Now, Twitter, again, is blocked in China, but sometimes people jump over the firewall using a VPN. And with that, we can see the actual real footage. No government media agency there of what's happening. And that's what I believe more in. Yeah. So sometimes when the Western make a spectacular announcement, or China makes a spectacular announcement, I sort of go, really? Like absolute poverty? Poverty is a horrible thing. It really is. Yeah? But don't just say that. There was another person who said the South China Sea islands, the man-made islands in the China Sea, which China claims is theirs, but at the same time the other countries declare it's theirs as well, like the Philippines, Vietnam, Brunei, Malaysia, even Indonesia, I do believe. So these islands man-made, why would they put them there for merchant sailing? I've been up and down these straits, you could say 10, 15 years ago when I did work on the ships. And the only reason they would be there is going to be military. And I know people would deny it. I've seen it on the shills, so to speak, who make this. So I really disagree that they are there for military purposes, because China doesn't have a good stance in the South China Sea. It's lots of the American bases in the Philippines, in Japan, in where else would you have them? Singapore, Malaysia, some of them, not massive ones, but quite small. And the big presence in Japan as well, with the American Army, American Navy, American Air Force. The list goes on. Now, I know I'm going to be bombarded with the, you could say, the bots or the Chinese nationalists who are actually using a VPN to view this channel, which, again, I repeat, is totally illegal. You don't have to believe me. Go into the Chinese law. There are even videos about the even videos of this girl saying that a VPN is illegal in China. So does that make your answers unvoid? There are applications where you can actually find where these people come from. If people are, or I'm thinking of one word, but I'm not, because I am polite most of the time, where they have clicked it and I found out exactly where they're from. So basically, if you're in China watching YouTube, you via a VPN, that's sort of illegal. But a lot of people do it, and you would even say the government sort of accept it, but it is illegal. And they would usually accept it if you are going to go and have a go at America or whatever. Do I like the American government? Well, I don't really like Joe Biden. I did like Donald Trump, and I hope he does win in 2024. Do I like the English government? I actually like Boris Johnson. You can disagree with that. That's entirely up to you. He was the guy who brought, you could say, even though he got, because of a party on 10 Downing Street during the COVID years when everything should be on lockdown, I think that's why he got taken down. But he did so much for the country. And that's what we look at. So when we look at Xi, what's he done? Well, he's put in the train system, the economy. It was growing anyhow, and he just claims false things with that, and like absolute poverty, and how he sort of like jumped ahead and couldn't wait. He wants to show his power, and that's why I'm not a big fan of him. But again, I'm not a big fan of a lot of politics. Again, like most people, I want a simple life. The money that I have, living happy, can go on holiday, have a car, have a motorbike, and just be an honest citizen. And that's exactly what I'm doing. And what I'm doing here is what some people can't in some countries, is the expression of freedom of speech. I can quite easily say, I don't like or I dislike King Charles. I can say, I hate Joe Biden. So at the same time, I can say, I hate President Xi. Now, in China, can you actually say that? There was a poll from Harvard that said 95%. That's close to 1.3 billion people say they're happy with the Chinese government, and that one I can't prove, but I find it very suspicious that you could say most of my friends just accept the situation and waiting for Xi to step down and maybe it can go back to the old days. As I mentioned before, after the opening of China way back in 78, 79, and we move forward to after Tiananmen in the 1990s, China did shoot up. I was there. I saw the difference between Shenzhen, between a fishing village to a modern city. Chengdu, from a beautiful town to a huge mega city. Wuhan, yeah, I was in Wuhan with a population of 3 million increasing to 11 million. It was a really dirty city in 1994, but it's cleaned up quite a lot. But what we don't see, but is there, and you go to the back streets of these places, which is not really shown on places like YouTube, but you can find them if you search for them, showing that there is absolute poverty. There are ladies of the night working on the streets in Shanghai. It does exist. Now, it's not that I live in China, but I do live in Asia for 31 years. I have been in China many times. I have seen a lot of the places when I go and visit a friend, and he's not a rich friend, let's say in Shenzhen, and I would see the back streets of Nanning or Shanghai or Lijian or Harbin or Urumqi or Kashgar. I have spoken to people in Xinjiang 2016, and you would say you weren't allowed to use a VPN. I had a friend who went there, she used a VPN, and the police came knocking on her hotel door. These are the things that I get from real people, my friends in China. Obviously, I'm not going to name them, and most of them, that's another story. I'm waffling on, so I'm going to leave it there for now. I await the lovely comments, and be aware, if there is a link that I reply to, that means I'm tracking you. Is that a threat? I don't know. But anyhow, it's nice to find out where people are coming from, and this is totally legal. My name is James. This is the James N. Cooper Show. Long live democracy. Bye-bye for now.